Hi everyone, it's Dr. Ramani. Welcome back to this YouTube channel that takes on all kinds of stuff related to narcissism, narcissistic relationships, and toxic situations in general, with the hope that what you learn on this channel will help you heal, help you figure these relationships out, and more importantly, give you the skills to set boundaries and learn that they really don't change. Make your decisions accordingly. So today's almost going to be like a riddle. Why don't we start with the riddle? And I'm going to have you all answer the riddle in the comments. What's worse, being with one narcissist or a group of them? So drop that in the comments. What do you think? What's worse, being with one or a group? I have no doubt that all of you are thinking, well, I mean, listen, if one is bad, 10's got to be worse. Somebody sent this question in as a video idea. It made me chuckle, this idea of which one's worse. And I had to sit with it for a minute. It seems so obvious to say 10 would be worse than 1. But actually the answer to this riddle is that it depends. It depends on the nature of the relationship or relationships, the kinds of supports you have around you, the setting, and the type of narcissist you're dealing with. Most of us have more than one narcissistic person in our life, those of us who are having to struggle with this. Sometimes those narcissists in your life know each other, sometimes they don't. If we have more than one narcissistic relationship in our life, but these folks are unrelated, a narcissistic partner, a narcissistic boss, and a narcissistic friend, for example, there's something particularly awful about that scenario because there's virtually nowhere to go to get a break. You tolerate the abuse at work, you come home and maybe get it from a spouse or partner, and then when you finally can get a night out with a friend, you get it from the friend. Everyone managing narcissistic relationships deserves one place in their life where they're sort of narcissist-free. It could be one friendship or a sibling you're close to, whomever. But in the absence of that, these cumulative but unrelated narcissistic relationships can take a real toll. But this question seemed to be asking about many narcissistic people at one time. For example, I would imagine in a family, being at a family gathering and having to deal with multiple narcissistic people in the family at the same time. Or being out with a group of friends and there being sort of a critical mass of narcissistic people when you're out. Or being at work and having to deal not only with a toxic boss, but with their merry band of enablers and fellow narcissists. Obviously, there's a bit of a dose-response relationship with narcissism. More is almost always going to be worse. Being in the presence of 20 smokers is more toxic than one smoker's secondhand smoke. But I got to tell you, I often think of that last scene in Jurassic Park when the dinosaurs were chasing the people, but then they switched to attacking and eating each other, and they start ignoring the people. There's also the possibility of that happening with the narcissists. The narcissists become so much more interested in fighting with each other because it's a much better fight, right? They're not going to step down for a fight. The other narcissists might take the bait, that it may end up being more gratifying for the narcissistic people to go after each other than to go after you. And in fact, just like with the dinosaurs, if you can find a way to sort of make yourself disappear a bit, they may not even notice you. So the question becomes whether the narcissistic people are going to mob together to come after you or be entertained or distracted by each other. And that depends. In a family situation, if it's a scapegoat or smear campaign situation, they may create a united front and come at you. And that is an absolutely wretched experience. And it brings up a lot of grief and heartbreak. If it's a workplace, and perhaps they think that getting you out will be more profitable or help with their advancement or centralize power in a way that works for them, a bunch of colleagues may come at you as a united front as well. When the narcissists are coming at you or for you, when they're in a pack, you're in trouble. It's like one of those bar fights where one person holds you and the other one takes hits. That is not an easy thing to come out of unscathed. However, if you're dealing with groups of narcissists, one thing that can be helpful is having your own group either present at that time or a group of people you can turn to for validation and a reality check. The more validating voices and anti-gaslighters you have in your midst, the better off you will be. Having those supports can fortify you, give you permission to set boundaries, tell you this situation's messed up, and even to just walk away. It's a lot less scary to walk when there are safe people to walk to. Sometimes seeing narcissistic people in a group can also be a little bit educational. Seeing multiple people simultaneously behaving this way at the same time, in a way, almost puts a more clear point on each individual person's narcissism. Seeing it ping pong off of each of them can give you the clarity you need if you doubted yourself on their individual narcissism. Somehow when it comes out out of that many speakers, you're like, wow. People who grew up in family systems where they were scapegoated and dealing with multiple generations of narcissistic abusers, and then even their own siblings, often know that definitely more is not better. It's much worse. However, when there's a lot of people doing this, it may result in a person being more willing to step away when there are more. The idea of having to face so many toxic people can be enough for folks to say, I'm out of here. I'm going to get the hell out of Dodge. I'm setting boundaries. Whereas if it's just one, people might be more likely to fight for it. Obviously, the higher the stakes of the relationship, the greater the impact. 10 narcissists who are casual friends will still have less of an impact than one narcissistic parent or one narcissistic partner. And the type of narcissism matters as well. If you're dealing with many malignant narcissists, that's very dangerous and scary. If you're dealing with many communal narcissists, that can be really annoying. But as long as you can tell them, oh, you're also great and humanitarian, they may just walk away and you'll likely survive that one. In simple terms, when it comes to something toxic, less is always going to be better, but it's not always that simple. If the narcissistic people in your midst are more interested in taking each other down, or you're uninteresting to them, then you may be able to get out before they stomp you on the head. But the old proverb of when the elephants fight, only the grass gets trampled, that proverb isn't lost on me. That sometimes happens too. If you have supports, you may be able to have a place of safe retreat. But if you are in their crosshairs and more than one is coming for you, then you are screwed and it won't end well for your mental health. Most of us who have narcissistic people in our lives have more than one, like I said. But they are often spread out across relationships and situations. And as I said, that takes its own kind of toll on us. Having to deal with lots of narcissistic people simultaneously, though, is like being at a cocktail party in hell. Once you sense a critical mass entering a room, look for the exits. In the grand scheme, obviously less will always be better, but it's not linear. And if the many narcissists around you aren't that interested in you or start going at you, or going at each other, I should say, and their natural competitiveness often means they do, then you may be okay. But it is in any of these situations, and one thing we do know about healing, as people start setting boundaries and they start saying, okay, I'm not doing this anymore, set boundaries or even start removing the narcissistic person, the main narcissistic person from their life. A lot of times it's interesting. People will often start with the most high-level narcissist in their life. They'll break off an intimate relationship. They'll distance from a narcissistic parent. But once they do that, it opens up the floodgates on like, oh my goodness, there's that friend and that sibling and that other family member and that colleague. You start noticing it. And then people recognize it wasn't just about getting that one person out of my life. Now I got to really start cleaning house. And you start recognizing that some of you might think, I think I only have one person in my life. Once we have one in our life, and especially if it's a significant relationship, we tend to get almost like it normalizes it. And so we don't notice it in some more low stakes relationships in our life. But once you remove the one, I promise you this, you're going to notice that any of you who have one likely have many. And that is why these relationships end up taking more of a toll than we think. We're breathing in more secondhand smoke than we ever dreamed. Thanks again.